5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Ay, caramba!
Welcome to Sacrilicious with Robin and Snerts, a Simpsons reviewed podcast. I'm your lovable nerd Snerts, aka Joshua Stearns, and joining me is the equally delightful Robin. Don't have a cow, coward.
Heyo, what's happening, Josh?
It's another day of Simpsons fun with you and me, sir.
Yes, it is. It's a perfect time to do this because it is hot as sin here in Georgia. And I get to stay safely tucked in my AC and do this, which I'm very thrilled about.
Yeah, I am enjoying my high rent life in the West LA area where it barely gets over the high 80s during the high times. But as someone who grew up in the San Fernando Valley where it definitely hits triple digits on the regular, I can relate.
It's not the heat, Josh. It's the humidity.
100%. Yeah, no, as we discussed in our last episode, you get that wet heat. Yeah, I mean, everything's going rad for my summer. How about you? It's been kind of chill but enjoyable.
Yeah, absolutely. I've done it's been an interesting summer for me. I've quit my job. I've been traveling to Mexico and stuff like that. It's been really fun, actually.
Nice, very cool. Yeah, I also had a really good positive review with the day job, so that's always good to hear.
Nice, congratulations.
Thank you. Put a little pep in my step. But anyway, if this is your first episode with Sacrilicious, here's how it works. At least for another episode, I pick an episode of The Simpsons, Robin picks an episode of The Simpsons, and then we talk. It's that simple. So now, without further ado, let's jump into our first Simpsons episode. And Robin, you picked another classic. We have a season 5, episode 1, Homer's Barbershop Quartet, which was directed by Mark Kirkland and written by Jeff Martin. And it first aired on September 30th, 1993. So we're back into my childhood.
This is definitely, Josh, one of those Homer Barbershop Quartet that was, again, we're in the era in 93 where everybody is watching every episode. And this was definitely one of those that stood out at the time. And I don't think I've watched this, many times since then. I mostly watched not my DVDs, but like syndication. I would see all out of these multiple times,
sure,
but I haven't been watching that for a while. So it's been a minute since I've seen this, and all of the jokes in this. And I knew I wanted to do this, and I wasn't sure what the jokes were that I was so attracted to. It was a blast going through it again.
Yeah, I like to point out our guest stars as well. We have George Harrison playing himself. Same with David Crosby.
Very amazing George Harrison from the Beatles.
Yes. And there's also the Dapper Dans. And when we were talking about pre-production, I was like, I don't know where I'm going to talk about the Dapper Dans. But seeing how I just said their name, maybe I'll talk about it now. So one of the things that the commentary mentioned is that the singing is a blend of the traditional voice actors from the Simpsons cast and the Dapper Dans. So when Barney is belting out those lyrics, that is Dan Castellaneta doing the singing. Same with like the other folks, Hank and Harry Shearer as well. But the harmonies and the blending of stuff that makes a quartet was done by the Dapper Dans, which is a group that you can find at Disneyland. And they went all the way to Anaheim, California to find some professional singers to help flesh this out because, as I'm sure we'll get into, the music in this episode is fabulous.
Yes, absolutely. And it's important because the songs are done really well. They sound very good. You enjoy them. So Homer's Barbershop Quartet is about the formation of a barbershop quartet. The way that we enter this episode is there's a swap meet in Springfield, and we get a dose of one of our favorites is Mayor Quimby.
Yes.
Doing some proper elitist, Boston senator, mayor type, going, human roaches, calling all the
Yeah.
citizens human roaches.
Yeah. Quimby
And
does
he does
not
the
have
news.
the respect for his people that he represents at all. He sees them, he is above them, and they are just vermin that happen to elect him so he can stay in power.
Somebody in the writer's room just did not like Ted Kennedy is pretty much what I think
Yeah.
it's all
Yeah.
about. His
Yeah.
entire arc in the show is about some writer who was took a set against Ted Kennedy.
Yeah, I mean,
So
I could go off on the Kennedys in general, but there's definitely a lot of references to it, and I'm looking forward to eventually when we're doing a more Quimby centric episode, so we could dive into that
mm-hmm.
further.
Mm-hmm. So we're at this Springfield swap meet, and they use this intro to do one of the themes of this episode, which they do joke after joke after joke in this
Yes.
show, Josh. I mean, it's just constant watching it. You're like, there's another one, and they're phenomenal. So we're at the swap meet, and we get a view of like the various booths that are going on, and that is a pretty hilarious scene, Josh. I know you agree.
Yeah, there's a lot of fun little bits here and there. For example, like Lisa finds the original Malibu Stacy doll circa 1958.
Uh-huh.
And the tits are large and pointy, and then the vendor, he kind of goes,
She's
"Yeah,
got those Madonna conal breasts sticking way
yeah,
out.
but you're good, Madonna. I totally forgot about that. That is a great point." And the vendor mentions it's like, "Yeah, it was taken off the market when the poor kid poked both his eyes out."
Put both of his eyes out.
Yeah.
He was going in deep. I love that piece.
Yeah.
There was there's the initial one which I mentioned. That's Mo is sitting there and he's got these clams with
Right.
Lucille Ball's face painted on them, and he does her voice like that's my best Lucy voice.
Well, and apparently, according to the commentary, that was actually something that was found at a swap meet for one of the writers.
But it serves zero purpose except that it's silly. And like one of the things I love about this episode is it's just all of these like stacked jokes. It's just so silly. This episode. It's one of the things I really love about it.
Yeah, I mean, they even have Homer going through all items 5-cent box, and we get classic references to things that like you would see in Antique Roadshow or something of that nature. So you see original copy.
Just stuff is worth millions.
Yeah, like an original copy.
I think he's going junk.
Correct. Yeah, Action Comics #1. Shostakovich violin.
Stratavarius.
All right, sorry. Yeah.
And Action Comics #1, which was the first
Superman.
Yeah.
Very first Superman comic. So yeah, it was very cute.
Had you recognized the stamps that he pulls out of there of the upside down plane?
I know those are valuable, but I couldn't.
The most valuable.
Yeah. Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. It's very rare.
And it looks like Marge is kind of joining Mo with the shitty gifts, right? Like the product, I should say.
She has a booth there.
Yeah, and
she's trying to sell like a wishbone necklace.
But as we talked about too, like surrounding her wishbone crap are the amazing paintings, because Marge is an excellent painter. And we get some callbacks of like when she went to the school and painted Homer, when she was commissioned to paint for Mr. Burns, as well as some of the Beetle paintings, which is very apt for this episode.
But they're iconic, images we've seen before.
Correct. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
So then we get to the impetus of our story where Bart and Lisa are at a booth with record albums, vinyl, and they're flipping through, and there's like the crusty album. A little silly joke with Melvin and the Squirrels, which is a call out to Alvin and the Chipmunks.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is. Again, that was just silly, and I appreciate it because I grew up with Alvin and Chipmunks, and I kind of.
And also keep in mind this was 93, so the Alvin and the Chipmunks were still in their heyday. Or at least maybe on the decline, but like they were more relevant in 93 than they are today.
Live action stuff was coming out.
There you go.
I think the heyday was in the 70s or even earlier than that.
70s I thought they were more of an 80s. But anyway.
I think so. I don't know. We'd have to check it out.
But this is not an Alvin and the Chipmunks podcast.
85, so. Yeah, so we'll have to look that up and not come back to it later. So,
absolutely. The
The other
Sacrilicious
record
way.
that they found. We're gonna do, what do they call those 10-minute episodes you do in between where you just
Yeah.
talk about all the things you did wrong? That could be fun. We'll talk about that later. But they're flipping through these vinyl records, and they find one that has Homer's face on it. And they're like, "Dad," and it's the Sharps, and it's a beautiful cover to the album. And they're like, "When was this?" I have a little clip of it actually.
Bart, look! It's Dad! Dad, when did you record an album?
I'm surprised you don't remember, son. It was only 8 years ago.
Dad, thanks to television, I can't remember what happened 8 minutes ago. No, really, I can't. It's a serious problem. What are we all laughing about?
Who cares?
That is such a brilliant scene right there. We
Yeah.
both talked about it beforehand, where we were like, we love this scene. The joke with Bart, the biting commentary, the modern screen-filled world, and its effect on children's brains it's so hilarious in this.
I mean, and think about what it would be like if Bart was on TikTok, you know?
Oh man.
Yeah.
So now we've established that Homer was in this barbershop quartet, and he starts to tell the story of this. You know, he goes, we both like this one. It's the magical summer of 1985.
Said no one ever.
The only thing they can come up is when Joe Piscopo left SNL.
Yeah.
And so now we get for the first time to be Sharps, and they are performing in Moe's, I believe. And the initial group is Apu, Skinner, Wiggum, and Homer. And that quartet is important. And there's another one of the things we talked about is the stacked jokes here. And Homer is talking about this, and Bart has a funny line real quick.
Barbershop? That ain't been popular since '06, dagnabbit.
Bart, what did I tell you?
No talking like a grizzled 1890s prospector. Concern it.
Yeah, I just like how Bart talks like a little prospector there. It's just kind of amazing.
It's one of those things, and there's a lot of in this episode where you have Bart asides. You know, one of the things he likes to talk in old timey. You know, we heard him doing an English one, like "I'm a chimney sweep."
Yes.
We hear them sing, and they're quite good, and they're singing some of the classic barbershop songs. And they're going around Springfield, and they show them at the prison.
Yeah.
If you remember.
I do. And I love how Snake is like, I'm going to bang that pig right between the eyes. And, and then he's like, as soon as they're done singing. And then they finish singing.
As soon as they're done singing this beautiful song.
Yeah. And he's just like, oh, that's kind of nice, you know? And I don't know where my Snake impression is today. It's kind of out all over the place.
But then, then we get this great little scene where he pegs Wiggum between the eyes with the rock. Wiggum goes down too.
Snake keeps his word, and he has a good arm. And the animation shows Wiggum just falling flat, like it's not like a bounce off the head and like, hey, it's that hurt. Out for the count.
That's a hospital visit right there.
Absolutely.
So what they do is they do these vignettes of them singing, and everybody loves them, and this attracts the interest of a manager in Springfield with an English accent, like, I want to represent you.
Yeah, a classic guy with his suit and everything and the ponytail, I believe. And I love how he's all good with the group, except for a few changes. For example, they have to ditch Wiggum because he's, quote, two village people. Which I thought was cute.
So I love the scene here. The animation is fantastic. So Homer switches the car, and Homer's driving, and Wiggum's in the car, and they're driving to the forest. Now, Josh, do you know where this trope came from, where you leave somebody in the middle of the forest?
I thought it was for dogs. Like, it was something like people would do with dogs.
Yeah.
Like, they would go out to the forest and be like, go, boy, you're free now.
I feel like there's a pop culture reference that began this, like a horror movie or like a drama from the 80s or something.
Yeah.
And I must know. So if anybody's listening and knows where because they do it in Wet Hot American Summer. Have you seen that classic?
No, I have not.
movie, one of the funniest movies you can watch. Wet Hot American Summer. It's a gag movie about summer camp. It's hilarious.
Okay.
So they are taking our Chief Wiggum out to the woods, and he's got like his head out the window like a dog with his tongue
Right.
out. And he's like, "Where are we going?" And Homer's like, "You'll see." And then he like pushes him out of the car and he drives off. And he's like, "No!"
Yeah.
Oh!
Which is a very funny bit because you can't just tell Wiggum that he's out of the group. You got to treat him like a dog and have this funny little animation. And they have like the full moon in the background and he's howling at the moon. So very well done for that bit. And yeah, I didn't know this was from something else. I thought this was just stuff that people did back in the day when they were sick of their dog.
I swear I mean, it was in the public psyche 100% because you've
okay.
seen this referenced many times in many different things. There was an SNL skit about this that I remember
really?
clearly.
Huh.
So now Wiggum is out of the group. There are only 3, and so they need a 4th. And so they're holding auditions in Springfield for their 4th, which is a great time for them to get a bunch of characters in. They bring in like Grandpa sings for them, and Willie is doing like that song, "When you're alone and you're feeling down, you can always go." He's in the Scottish Irish. He's like, "Dun tune."
Yeah. I also like how Jasper doesn't really sing. He has this like, it's the theme from a summer place. Yes, the theme. And I like that kind of like where he's not really singing kind of any lyrics, but he's trying to keep in tempo with the music and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why that tickled me a little bit, but it
We
did.
love Jasper.
Yeah.
And then we have a Chief Wiggum who comes in disguise. It's the start of a theme in this show where Chief Wiggum keeps trying to break back in to the group or sully them. And he's in this, mustache trying to sing, and the mustache falls off. They're like, "It's Chief Wiggum," and he like jumps out the window.
He says
great.
something along the lines. He's like, "This bird has got to fly."
So, but they're not finding anybody good for this. One joke that I know we had talked about, when they fire Wiggum, the manager tries to get Apu to change his name.
Yes.
He's like, Nahaspian Pedal. He's like, no. We're going to go with a much simpler name. You're going to be Apu Demarche.
Yeah, I love how they go with the very long, complicated Indian-based last name to a long, complicated French last name. Like,
there's a callback to that later too. So they are at Moe's and they can't find anybody. They're like, "Where are we going to find somebody?" And then they hear this angelic voice coming from the bathroom, and they're like, "Oh, who is that?" And they go into the bathroom. You've got the fantastic image of Barney Gumble is on the floor, like searching for something underneath the toilet on the floor.
He's on all fours looking for his toothpick.
And it's just extraordinarily beautifully singing. Like an angel.
It's an amazing voice.
And he's searching for his toothpick on the floor. I think that was hilarious. So they've got their guy, and they're like, "You want to be in the group?" And he's like, "Sure."
It did not take much convincing for Barney to get on board.
He's like, "Yeah, whatever, I'm in."
So now we get our first concert at Moe's.
With Barney and Toad, they're killing it.
Yeah. I also love their outfits. I love all the Barbershop Quartet outfits. They do a very good job animating those.
The hats and the red striped shirts.
Yeah. And I also love how Wiggum in the theme for the episode brings protesters. They're like, "Barney never, Wiggum forever." And then as soon as Barney goes, "Sweet Caroline," all the signs are like, "Barney forever, Wiggum never."
Yeah. Wiggum keeps trying to get back in or sell him, and he's thwarted every turn. But it does, showcase that Barney's voice is beautiful in this.
Yeah. Which sucks because Wiggum was doing okay, but it is kind of like, like average basketball player versus Michael Jordan type of skill level, right? The average basketball player is still good, but they're no Michael. I also love. Did you notice that they had a little baby Lisa in the crowd that Marge was holding?
Oh,
And at first, my brain was like, "That's wrong. Maggie has blue and a pacifier and a bow. What's going on here?" And I'm like, "Oh wait, flashback. That's a little baby Lisa." And I like how they already had the pearls on her already as a baby. I thought it was pretty cute.
Oh, the animators of this are fantastic.
Yeah.
As we say every episode. So this concert was bonkers, and they know they've really got something going, and so the next path is clear. And I think I have a little clip here that will tell you.
Only one question remains, gentlemen. What do we call ourselves?
How about Handsome Homer Simpson +3?
I like it!
Wait, I do not think no, we need a name that's witty at first, but that seems less funny each time you hear it.
How about the B Sharps?
Perfect.
Such a good little scene. This is the thing that I remembered, I think, most from this, seeing it the initial time, is that joke stuck with me. I reference that joke a lot in my life.
Yeah, I'm not a big music head myself, but I do recognize the joke, and I've used it every once in a while to make myself seem smarter amongst musicians.
And there's another joke that you really liked where they're like the B Sharps, and they all put their hands in.
Yeah, and then Wiggum just comes out of nowhere, and he's like, "The B Sharps." And they all kind of like look at him.
They look at him. He's like, "What?"
I also love how Barney is like, "I like it." Like it just
Handsome Homer +3. I like it. So now we flash back to the modern, to current time, and they're in the car driving home from the swap meet. And a couple of fun things that they brought back with them is Bart's carrying a bong, and he's like, "Look at my pencil holder."
Yeah, I also love how Homer kind of is like, "Far out, man. I haven't seen a bong in years."
and Marge is sad because she hasn't sold her wishbone necklaces, which is so sad. They look.
It was so sad that like, and I was like, "Who told you this was gonna be a good idea?"
It looked nasty. And so Homer's like, "You know what? We didn't come out all behind because I sold the spare tire." And then the tire
immediately gets a flat
and
tire.
They have no spare tire, and they then switch to the scene of them on the side of the road with the car jacked up, and Marge is walking down the road.
Yeah,
and they're in the middle of the desert.
Yeah, there's like a cattle skull.
And it says 12 miles to the next service station.
And the sign doesn't look like your average road sign. It looks like a sign that like some prospector put it like up there, right? Like you know?
Oh yeah. I mean, they're deep in the wilderness of the desert there. Yeah. And obviously Marge is sent off to go find it. Oh, Homer. Oh, Marge. So Homer's like, well, we've got a lot of time now. So let's continue the story.
Yep.
So they're talking about how they needed something new, something exciting, something mid-'80s. And there's another clip here of him trying out some songs. Homer's songwriting at this point.
There was nothing in Al Capone's vault, but it wasn't Geraldo's fault. Go!
Do you remember the Geraldo and the vault? It was a sensation.
I mean, I was 3 in 1985, so I don't remember a lot.
This is a throwback for people my age. So then we get the idea for the very famous song in this.
Look what I got. Now people will stop intentionally ramming our car.
Love that.
Baby on board. Baby on board. Something, something. Burt Ward. This thing writes itself. I'm telling you, it's mighty nice. Each trip's a trip to paradise. With my baby on board.
Gentlemen, you've just recorded your first #1.
Oh, yes!
Yes!
I didn't know that clip was that long. I love something, Burt Ward. This thing writes itself.
Yeah,
That's one of my
Homer being a music writer is a real twist for this episode. Usually he's the buffoon, but this one he actually seems to have some kind of skill set.
I mean, the song is good. It's catchy.
Yeah.
You said before we started recording that you had it stuck in your head and you were pretty muffed about it.
Yeah, I do have a complaint for my co-host Robin here. Last episode we did the Dropkick Smurfies because we were doing the Departed, and that was stuck in my head. Like I was in the grocery store picking out apples and like din, 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 like son of a bitch. And then in this one specifically, I love the Coney Island song, My Coney Island Babe. Especially at the end when they're like, ho, ho, he,
oh, my,
he, hi. And, you know, there's just something about that's really catchy to me. And like, I was literally cooking breakfast this morning, like cooking up some bacon and eggs, right? And I was like, oh, so I'm a little tired of having this music stuck in my head for days on end.
I'm sorry, John, I'm not going to apologize.
This is the sacrifice I'm willing to make for our listeners.
So the producer's like, listen, y'all are going to #1. Like, you're about to be big time. And we switch home, and Homer's excited, telling Marge about it. And what happens is he's like, I'm gonna go home and tell Marge, and the producer is like, we don't want you to talk about Marge because a lot of women are gonna want to have sex with you. And we want them to think they can. Goes, well, if I explain it to Marge that way, I'm sure she'll understand it. It cuts to her just sobbing.
Yeah.
Poor Marge.
I really love that bit too, because it is a very hard cutaway. And she is like on the bed, sobbing uncontrollably.
It's heartbreaking.
It is very heartbreaking, but it's also hilarious at the same time. It's like one of those things where you're like, oh, oh.
Exactly. And Marge. We love Marge. So what we see next is the song going through the roof, and it's a bunch of people across town are listening to it. They've got kind of a little funny throwaway jokes here at the senior home, and they're like listening to it, and Jasper's like, change the channel, and Sea Captain is battling a giant squid, and then the song like eases them, and they become friends and put their arms around each other. But they're blowing up, and Marge hears it on the radio, and she's like, Homer, you're going to be famous. And there's a part there that we loved where Homer's like, I'm going to still be a good dad.
And then Marge asks, where's Bart? I stuck him somewhere. Cut to the basement where he's underneath a laundry basket that's upside down with rocks on top. And he has like a tin cup that he's running against the bars of like the basket, right? So it kind of looks like he's stuck in prison. It kind of honestly gave me a little bit of the Pirates of the Caribbean vibe when like you're going through the prison section.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what I love about it is that this is just another quick cutaway joke. It's not really driving the main story or anything.
Yeah.
And they do that a lot, but we've seen some episodes where that don't work that well. And this one, it's perfect. It's joke after joke after joke, and they're all hitting. I did also love the scene of Bart in there. It's just hilarious.
Yes.
So this is where we start to get references to their like Beatles status with this song. And, you know, they show them traveling to New York, and they come off the plane there's a very famous scene where the Beatles came to New York. It's the first time they'd crossed the pond. And there was just this massive welcome in New York that was feverish. And,
it's very clear on the DVD commentary that everybody who was a part of this episode are huge fans of the Beatles. Mm-hmm. And the animators really took painstaking to try to recreate famous moments throughout their history for the show. So some of those are like beat for beat moments of history that they're parroting for the B Sharps. And I love how we go into the press conference now, right?
There's a couple of good ones in this because they're like asking them questions. The first one I thought was funny is the callback to the Demarche. Where he's like, a question for Apu to Beaumarchais. Sorry, isn't it true that you're really an Indian? He goes, by the many arms of Vishnu, I swear it is a lie. which
I also
you
love
know,
how they laugh at when Barney's just like, they found me on the bathroom floor.
everybody laughs.
And there's like a little tear that
A
comes
little
out.
tear goes down his face.
And then one of the reporters goes like, Skinner, we hear you're the funny one. And he just, as dryly as possible, goes, yes.
Yes.
And they all laugh. Everybody laughs.
Everybody laughs like, oh, he nailed it.
So I do like the idea that the stick up the ass Skinner.
It's the driest answer, and everybody's like, ha, ha, ha. A little
stuff.
media fucking there, I guess, So the next piece, Josh, is they're in New York and they're playing this huge event.
Yeah.
And it is the 100-year anniversary of the Statue of Liberty, and like the President Reagan is there, and I don't know, President Ronald Reagan, who was their president from 1980 to 1988, and a renowned son of a bitch. But
fuck you, Reagan.
Fuck you, Reagan. And he's sitting there, he's disgruntled. It's still funny to have Ronald Reagan in it going like, I could have been doing other things.
He's
but
like, Nancy, I could have been doing anything right now. Like in his constant little whispery.
And he calls Nancy mommy in it.
Oh yeah.
I don't know what that reference is, but it's funny. A little weird.
Give me some boys fucking vibes there when he starts calling him mommy.
So this event, Josh, was a real event, and I was there. So in 1985, they had done a massive
renovation, retrofitting.
Yes, a renovation on the Statue of Liberty. And in 85, for the 100-year anniversary, they relit the torch. And it was President Reagan who relit the torch and everything. And I was there, and it's one of the seminal trips of my childhood. I was about 8 years old, and I was staying in the Carlisle, and my sister and I were having dinner at the Ritz-Carlton.
Nice.
And we were fancy. And I got to meet the producer of The Karate Kid, which is like one of my favorite movies of all time at that point.
Nice.
And he was very nice, and we spoke. And then he said he was going to send me gifts, and he did not.
Well, at least he was very nice.
He was very nice. So, but that was a real event. That was a trip for me to see. I wrote my sister, who I got to stay with. She was in her 20s at the time.
So, like, when you see something like that, did you immediately get brought back to that time?
Like that.
Yeah.
And it was such a seminal trip going up there for that.
Well, also, like, given your age, too, like, you were, 77? You're, like, at that right age for a trip to, like, really mean something to you where you can remember it.
And I was a very adventurous kid. Like, I was bad at sports, but I was good at not being afraid of getting on an airplane and going somewhere by myself. I flew this trip by myself. I'd flown out to Los Angeles by myself when I was 6.
Yeah, back in the glory days where that was a lot easier. You could just stick a kid on a plane and go, okay, see you sometime soon.
I wouldn't trust any stewardesses with my kid these days. But we digress. So there's another scene in that right there where Homer's giving a tribute, and he's like, we'd like to dedicate this next number to a very special woman, talking about the Statue of Liberty. She's 100 years old, and she weighs over 200 tons.
Oh my God, this giant woman is going to kill us all.
I meant the statue. I love the scene where this guy's like, oh my God. Jumps into
the water. Like,
it's so silly. This is such a silly episode, and I love it.
And they do that every once in a while too, where like someone makes an announcement and then somebody in the audience freaks out and like jumps out a window or jumps over a ledge or something of that nature.
Yes, and I love those gags.
Yeah. And then
so we've established now the B Sharps as this mega band.
Yes.
And so famous that there's a joke about them on Johnny Carson.
Yeah, and Joan Rivers as well.
Yes.
So like the old talk show circuit, this is something that like I am very familiar with, but wasn't like really appreciating when it was out and about. But I do like that. I also like how Wiggum mixes up his gun for the remote.
What set it up is the joke is a dig on Wiggum, and he goes Gilligan, the skipper, and Chief Wiggum. Chief Wiggum, he's like, name 3 castaways. Johnny Carson like, ho. And he starts shooting it. And his wife goes, Clancy, use the remote.
Yeah, what I love too is then he switches to like another channel. He's like, "Oh yeah, okay," and then like Joan Rivers does another insult, so then he throws the gun to the TV.
I love that little bit. Again, these are
Yeah.
just stacked jokes that
Also, did
just.
you notice that Carson was wearing a fez instead of the turban thing, right? And the reason
Okay.
for that is they didn't name him Carson; they named him like late night comedy host. So they
Mhm.
had a very generic name, so they didn't want to get in trouble with the Carson people and do the full thing when they didn't call him Carson like they do in a later episode where he comes to save Krusty.
Okay.
Little things like that I thought were kind of fun. I did notice the fez, but then it was kind of like explained a little bit more in the commentary.
I love Mrs. Wiggum, like, Clancy, use
Yeah.
the remote.
Yeah.
That's a little good one.
Also, I mean, can you
So-
imagine being that poor woman's life when your kid is Ralph and you know and your husband is Clancy? I mean, my
She's
God,
definitely got some on the side, you know?
right? Or just Anywho,
So, you know, the thing is their astronomical rise, and so the next scene takes us to the Grammys where they're nominated, and it immediately is their category, and we see them win.
Yeah.
And so they've won a Grammy now. So this again, the meteoric rise. They've gone straight to the top, won the biggest prize, and there's a great joke there where Barney, the alcoholic, meets David Crosby, who's a renowned just boozer, drug using partier.
Oh, okay.
Just like the hardest partying guy
Gotcha.
in rock and roll,
All right.
David Crosby. And so that's why Barney goes, I really love your work. And he goes, oh, you a fan of my music? And he goes, you're a musician?
Yeah, that one went way over my head. No idea where that was going.
So some of our listeners, depending, will probably. That's the thing, is that there's all these jokes about the 80s in there, which I really did love. So then we get to the after party, and the first thing that happens is that Homer runs into George Harrison, one of the very famous Beatles, Sir George Harrison. I'm fairly certain, but I have a clip from that real quick too.
Then came the greatest thrill of my life.
Oh. Hello, Homer. I'm George Harrison.
Oh my God! Oh my God! Where did you get that brownie?
Over there, there's a big pile of them.
Oh man!
Wow, what a nice fella.
I love that clip. I love that tag. I love the tag of "Wow, what a nice fellow."
You know what I just picked up on that listen? It was where he goes, he's so excited for the brownies.
Yeah.
Oh, so in meeting George Harrison, Homer, very true to form, sees the brownies, and he's far more interested in that. He doesn't know who the hell the Beatles are. But it's another of many references to the Beatles in this, which is a lovely part of this. So they've hit the top, you know, they've won the Grammy. Homer's got a plate of brownies. Everything is going brilliantly. And then we go back to the hotel room, and Homer's talking to his little daughter, Lisa. And she's like, I miss you, Daddy. And he's like, I miss you too. And we see him really kind of start to really get homesick.
Yeah, it turns out it's kind of lonely on the mountaintop.
Mm-hmm.
And I love how he's overlooking a nicely drawn rendition of Hollywood. And he looks to the right, and there's a billboard for Happy Family Brand Bourbon.
That got me good. That's hilarious. I did not pick up on that. That got me good
because they're trying to show like how much he misses his family, and then there's a booze ad that features an entire family with shit-eating grins on their face. And fans, I guarantee you, for one of our fake ads, we are going to bring in Happy Family
100%.
Brand Bourbon eventually.
100%. That's fantastic. So the scene continues where he's sad, and this waiter comes in with a bottle of champagne he's ordered, and Homer's like, I don't have anything for a tip. Well, just take this. And he gives him the Grammy as like basically the tip, and he's like, oh my God, an award statue. And he goes, "Oh, it's a Grammy," and just throws it over the side.
And what
then
I
love
love,
how
yeah, and then at the end, someone's like, "Hey, you don't throw your trash down here," and he throws the
like,
Grammy back up.
this is something the writers do every once in a while when they just trash awards.
Yeah,
They love to just occasionally trash, fancy, lovely things.
they will make fun of the whole like Hollywood, like just kind of being so far up their own ass with rewards and,
Yeah,
and the pomp and
100%.
circumstance and how ridiculous all it is. They have no problem like making fun of any of it. And in this one, they just had their sights set on the Grammy.
So, we then cut back to modern times again, and Homer has grabbed a box of their old merch out of the attic and is showing it to Bart and Lisa, and they're enjoying his like lunchbox. And there's a funny bit there with Homer and Bart where he's like, they have this spray foam for the
Yeah.
B-sharps.
Yeah, kind of like silly
And it's
foam
like-
or something like
and there's
that.
like, it's toxic. Only an idiot would eat it. And it switches to Bart eating it. He's like, Bart.
That was
It's great.
kind of
It's a
gross
great
too.
Homer, like Bart.
The animation of like Bart, like cheeks full of this pink foam, and it's kind of everywhere. It's kind of gross.
It's horrible. I'm putting the insulation in my walls right now.
Yeah.
It's not good. But there's a funny line there where it goes, "I can't believe you're not still popular. What did you do? Screw up like the Beatles and say you were bigger than Jesus?" Homer goes, "All the time. It was the title of our second album."
Yeah,
Which is
and
a
also
throwback to the Beatles saying they were
the
bigger than
artwork on their album is one of the Beatles covers, right? Like with them walking across, only instead of it being the crosswalk, it's water
Mhm.
that they're walking on. So once again, a lot of visual cues from the actual history of the Beatles are
Abbey
showing
Road.
up everywhere in this episode.
Yep.
I also like how Homer brings up some kind of cliche of like what comes up must come down.
He says, "But we're about to learn the iron law of show business. What goes up must come down."
And then, of course, what do the kids do? They immediately start
Start
giving
like-
us references.
Lisa goes, "What about Bob Hope? He's been consistently popular for over 50 years." And then Bart's like, "So is Sinatra."
Dean Martin still packs them in. Ditto for Tom Jones.
Shut up. And I hope we get a good Homer going, "Shut up." So we head back to the story. And what we're seeing is Marge is at home with the kids alone because Homer is touring. And she says, "With the father on the road, I tried to compensate for his absence." So we get this great little vignette. Again, it's
Yep.
just silly. And she's built this effigy out of like a pillow and two arms that
It
are
looks like-
balloons.
it
and
looks
it's like
like-
a tin cup head. And
It looks like a sack of pine cones with two balloon arms that have rubber cleaning gloves on them and a metal helmet for a head that has drawn on eyes and a mouth.
to like substitute for Homer, and she's got like a video cassette of his voice, and we
Yeah.
get this little fun thing where they play it, and then the kids are looking at this like, what the hell, and then the recorder starts going fast. It's like, and they're like, ah. And then Marge comes in to try and fix it and knocks Homer's head off, and that pops the balloon. They're like, ah. It's a fun little scene.
Yeah,
right
and
there,
then
just
like
a
one of the
little
gloves
throwaway.
go flying and hits Bart in the face and then kind of slowly falls down. It
That's
was
trauma right there.
disturbing.
That's some trauma right there.
Yeah.
So,
Marge is trying but failing.
oh yeah, we love Marge. I mean, she get it done. She'll get it done.
Yep.
So now we switch back to the group, and they're struggling, Josh. They look ragged. There's circles under their eyes. But the funny thing is, they're recording their new song, and it's ridiculous. I actually have this scene right here. This is where the band is starting to fall apart.
Meanwhile, the group was having problems of its own. For all the latest medical poop, call Surgeon General C. Everett Koop.
This is worse than your song about Mr. T.
I pity the fool who doesn't like heat. And where's
That's okay,
my
Joe.
Oh, he's with his new girlfriend, the Japanese conceptual artist.
Barbershop is in danger of growing stale. I'm taking it to strange new places.
Number 8. Number 8. Number 8. Number 8. Number 8.
So this is a reference to, of course, the White Album where they have number 9, which is a very
Okay.
concept song. So that's, like the beginning of the song is number 9, and I can't remember what the sound is. Number 9, number 9. So it's a direct reference to that song of
Gotcha.
theirs.
Yeah, I'm only passingly familiar with the Beatles, so that one flew way over my head.
Oh, that's one of the great things. That's one of the reasons I love this episode
Yeah.
so much, is because this is just like hit so many of those for me.
But I was told that shot when they're listening to that recording with the way the placement is, so they have like a Pooh on the left side of the screen, right? And he's kind of looking disheveled. You have Yoko and Barney like who are front and center. That is a beat for beat shot based off a photo that was taken at the time of that recording.
Oh, no kidding. That's awesome.
Yeah,
Of
so
course
they
they did that.
painstakingly like the everything, their head movements, everything was based off of that photo.
One is the animation director there, was in charge of that.
Yeah, they really wanted to like recreate those shot for shot moments.
At this point, they kind of know they're done, because Skinner gets a magazine, and it's like it's the What's Hot and Not issue of People, and they're like, "Are we hot? We are not."
I do kind of like that. I don't remember that being a thing, the hot or not.
Probably,
but it does
likely.
totally make sense. It reminds me of like TV Guide. Didn't they have like cheers and jeers or something like that?
Yeah, exactly.
And I also love how they immediately read one review and they all go back to their lives. They're like,
They're
it's
like,
over.
"That's it.
We're done. We can
We're
never
not
make
hot
another
anymore."
good song again.
And so we see them go their separate ways. We get some vignettes in there of them going home, and Skinner goes back to the school. Pooh goes back to work, and Barney goes to Moe's.
Yeah. So Yoko and Barney go to Moe's, and I love this bit right here. So Yoko goes, "I would like a single plum floating in perfume in a man's hat."
And Moe's just like, "Here you go."
He literally pulls it
Barney
right
a
from
beer
underneath the
and
counter.
and like
he's
a bowler hat filled with perfume and a single plum.
I just love
just
how
from
quick-
right under the bar.
Fabulous. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it.
I love the silliness that they have in this episode. And there's a quick joke that we both like about like the chicken had replaced Homer at the power plant.
Yeah.
And they're like, you got to go now. And Homer's like, "I'll give it a good home."
Yeah, they allude to Homer
Pats his
eating
stomach.
the chicken, which was
Not only
fantastic.
take his job, he ate the motherfucker too. That's cool as hell. But so then that's the story. Homer's like, "That's it. That's the story." And they're like, "Man, that's some story," but I love the kids there.
Yeah, so the kids once again are kind of playing what the audience is thinking. How come we never heard about this before? Mind you, this is the 5th season
What
of the
happened
show.
to the money?
Since when could Homer write a song?
I love that one. It's like, so that's it, can you write a song?
So, and then with all this nostalgia feeling, they decided to do what the Beatles did, right? Which is the rooftop concert.
Yeah, Homer's feeling nostalgic, and he calls them up, and they meet up there. And this is again a famous concert that the Beatles did years after they had broken up, where they had worked on some songs together and were putting out an album. They did this as a promotion. They were up on top of this hotel, and they mimicked this on top of Moe's, and they start singing "Baby," and everybody turns to them, and it's just like so enraptured. They all gather around and everything. And there's a funny bit right there where there's like a human fly crawling on the building across the street.
I love that
Nobody's
too.
looking at him,
and he's kind of complaining. He's like, "Come on, I spent all night dyeing my underwear."
There's another little funny gag there where kid's like, "Get your paper, read all about it," and this guy's like, "I'll take one." He's like, "This has nothing to do with it, kid."
And the final one, we get George Harrison coming up, and he in a limo.
Like,
he rolls down, he looks up, he's like, "It's been done."
It's been done, exactly. So, and they finish it out, and here I have the last line of this episode, which I think is just hilarious.
Pretty, huh, Chief? It sure is, Lou. It sure is. Get the tear gas.
It's a trip to paradise. My baby on board.
So I like how Wiggum potentially gets the last laugh. I also in the commentary, Hank Azaria confirmed that Lou is based off of Sylvester Stallone, which I
Oh,
didn't pick up on before.
Adrian.
Yeah, I got to hear a little bit. Like, hey, Chief, that's kind of nice, right? And I just love how Wiggum throughout this entire episode kept trying to get like his comeuppance, and at the end, it's alluded to that he does.
He's gonna shoot him with tear gas. So my final thoughts on this: I love the writing in this. It is some of the Simpsons writing that I love the most, where they're just hammering me with little in jokes of people that had this experience, and it's just one after the other. And there's some episodes of that wouldn't work in. This one I thought they did exceptionally well. Loved it. I wasn't sure about doing this episode, Josh, because I thought it might be schmaltzy, and it turned out to be one of my favorite episodes we watched this year. I love the silliness, the random jokes, but it feels cohesive and awesome.
Nice. Well, my final thoughts is much like the Departed episode, not being a knowledgeable fan of the Beatles makes the references fall flat at times. I can respect the work that goes into making everything as accurate as it is, but it's not for me. It's for the Beatles fans. And if it, honestly, I probably wouldn't even know of said similarities if it wasn't for social media, because there's so many like Simpsons accounts out on all the socials that show pictures
Yeah.
and deep dives and stuff of
It's
that
a
nature.
blast.
So it's one of those
That's a
things
rabbit
where,
hole to go down.
right. And so like through that, I've grown to appreciate this episode a little bit more. I love the short-term memory joke with Bart, Wiggum throughout the entire episode, and the ridiculous drink from Yoko at the end. And I like the music.
A single plum floating in perfume in a man's hat.
Yes.
Have you ever had that, by the way?
No, when I go order it at the local karaoke bar, they kick me out.
Well, good job, me.
Well, great job, you. And before we dive into our next episode, let's take a brief commercial break. Hi, everybody.
Hi, Dr. Sven.
Now, we've all been there. You're living your best feudal life, and then it happens. A Genital Snerfs flare-up. Luckily, there's Azrael Clean by Gargamel Apothecaries.
Wow, Dr. Sven, that sounds like a miracle. How does it work?
You slather the cream into the affected area, like all over it, and then the little devils will run into their homes. Make sure to keep the cream away from all your open orifices to avoid unimaginable burning sensations.
Fascinating and terrible. What if you have the more severe Papa Brainy Snerf infection?
Oh, for an infection this serious, we recommend a 90-day inpatient treatment at our Springfieldia clinic.
Amazing. Their Springfieldia location is just south of the Heads on a Pike, and they are open most of the time. Mention Sacrilicious at checkout for a free used loincloth with every purchase.
And now, back to our show. Well, another lovely sponsor for Sacrilicious with Robin and Snerts. I am thankful to report that I have never had genital Snerfs, nor have I had genital Snerts.
Did you get the number?
Yeah. 1-800-444-SNERFs.
Okay, thank you. I need that. Honestly, I don't want to get too personal here, listeners.
Oh, okay. Now, are you able to like collect
me.
the cute little hats and like put them on display somewhere?
No, man, they're magic. They always like stick right back down there, and like you take your pants off, with the partner, those little hats stand out, man.
Now, do they have like
and
little mushroom?
And the
do they have like little mushroom houses that they live in too?
No, that's my penis.
Oh, okay, very good. Well, if you can't guess it by our fake ad that we had this week, I picked a more recent episode, season 29, episode 1, The Serfsons, with the original air date of October 1st, 2017. It was directed by Rob Oliver and written by Brian Kelly. I also think it's pretty neat that we picked 2 episode number 1s, even though they were at different seasons. So before I dive into it more, like, what was your experience with the Serfsons? Is this your first time seeing this episode?
No, it's not. And I have not seen a lot of the episodes from season 29. As we've talked about, probably after season 15 or 16, I really have seen a lot fewer of them. But I think I've seen more than I even thought, because I have seen this episode before. and it was the Snerfs that keyed me into it.
Nice. Yeah, I mean that's obviously my favorite joke, and buckle in, folks, because we're going to be referencing that a few times as we discuss this episode. I also recall this being very heavily advertised because it is the season opener. So a lot of times they do a lot more heavy promos for it. There was artworks and billboards all over town, if I remember correctly, in the Los Angeles area, because they were really trying to sell this as like this is something different. Which is why I like this episode so much. You know, a lot of times they have episodes where they have 3 stories that go through mythos or historical events, but it is still somebody in present day Springfield saying those stories. Not this time around. We are in a completely different Springfield. It's Springfieldia, I believe.
Very different format for the intro. It even starts very quietly.
Yeah, and they there's a lot of Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings, Chronicles of Narnia.
Yeah, it's very much an opening in the similar style of, thank God they didn't have that music, Josh, because that would have been stuck in our heads if they actually got that theme.
Bum, 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 bum,
oh, jeez. Sorry, listeners.
One joke after another. Ha, ha, ha,
swinging dicks. There's so many swinging dicks. Dicks in your face.
We have a couple guest stars too. We got Billy Boyd playing himself. I don't know who this person is or what their role was for this episode. I just wrote it down. And then we have
Billy Boyd was a hobbit. In Lord of the Rings.
He was one of the hobbits?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Which hobbit was
there's
he?
a song in like the 3rd one that he sings the song. Actually, and it's him singing
so he's Pippin?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. One of those things where I don't recognize the names, but the faces. I would definitely recognize the
I had
faces.
a little crush on him.
There you go. And then we also have Nikolai Coster-Waldau, and I am so sorry if I mispronounced your name, good sir, if you're listening, as
Definitely
Marky.
is.
And people will know him from the hit show Game of Thrones as Jaime Lannister.
Jaime Lannister.
Were you a fan
Nikolai
of the...
Waldau.
So I know, like, I'm a fan of Game of Thrones and Lord of the Rings. You mentioned Chronicles of Narnia in your opener, like when we were talking. So are you also fans of Lord and Game of Thrones?
So I read the first couple of books for Game of Thrones, and like several other series that I've started, I recognize that it was maybe not a road I wanted to go down.
Sure.
So I did that, but I loved those books, and I loved the television show.
Nice.
Except for the last season, because it was crap.
I would go with the last episode of the last season, because there was that big fight in Winterfell that I thought was a fantastic episode.
Yeah.
I am a big fan of Game of Thrones. I've read the first 4 books. I am not reading any more books, George R.R. Martin, until you get the fucking work done and you finish the series, because he keeps doing all this other stuff.
People
except for
revolt.
Finishing the Song of Fire and Ice, and I really want him to put like a lid on that. I am a big fan of the Lord of the Rings movies. I've seen the extended editions as well, and I've seen one of the movies for Chronicles of Narnia, but I have not like really dived much.
They're good.
So it sounds like both of you, you and I have a healthy appreciation and enjoyment of
for all
the
these
fantasy
references
fandoms,
here.
right?
Yeah,
so,
definitely.
That's probably another reason I like this episode so much, besides the diversion to a new, unique format. So obviously, to open up, we get the Game of Thrones. You know, it's very much like we're seeing the different cast levels of this new area.
Exactly.
And there's a ton of visual gags throughout this episode. It's too many to name, but I do really love how they kind of like introduce all the characters and their position within this fantasy world, and everything is pretty much established by the opening credits.
It's the kingdom of Springfieldia.
Yes, very good.
King Quimby.
Yes. And then we have like the pores, you know, down there too, and we see like someone like missing a leg or doing some other terrible things. Like it's pretty funny.
The lowest of the low is how they're like the Simpsons.
Basically, yeah. And so we go from the opening showing the different cast levels of feudal Springfieldia, and we open with the family hovel, and Marge is serving water soup again. But a quick bonk on the head of
soup.
Yeah, but a quick bonk on the head of a crow, and now all of a sudden it's crow soup. It's really cool because they have 3 eyes. So
it's a great gag because I mean it sets up this whole show because it's a little gross. You know, he just like knocks the bird on the head and throws it in.
Yep, and then I like
how
everybody
gets an eye because it has 3 eyes like the fish.
Right, and then Homer, Bart, and Lisa all claim an eye each. Like, I get an eye, I get an eye. So
Me two, me
Lisa
three.
is not a vegetarian in this feudal society. She needs to eat what she has
No.
to eat. I
Oh
also love
yeah.
how Maggie sucks on the beak, which is great.
A
And then all of
little
a sudden, they're
disturbing growth. She
before they can
rips it
even
off,
dive
splits it
into
in half.
their crow soup, where they are interrupted by Rainier Wolfcastle bursting through the hovel with a full set of armor and horse. And he demands that the Serfsons apologize for getting in the way of his horse.
He's like, your hovel got in the way of my horse.
Yeah, and then Homer does some A class hoof kissing, you know.
It's
It's
kind of
kind of
funny.
like
It's a
doing,
little funny scene.
yeah, and he's doing the like,
He's like,
oh,
"Oh, you're so great, horse. Are those new shoes?"
yeah. And I was trying to pick up on like who he was impersonating, because like it was just like, oh, you know, like I don't know if it was like a Jerry Lewis or something like that. And
It
he's
was
like,
almost
oh,
like
you're
a
just so
sub
magnificent,
to a
or
dom.
a Woody Allen or something like that. It's like, oh, I
Mhm.
just, you know, you're so lovely. And I also love how after he's done kissing the hoof of the horse kind of wipes the spit off of him
I
with
know.
Homer's shirt, which is
On his
hilarious.
shirt. It's like,
Again,
ew.
the animation is this. It's
Yeah, top
unfortunate
notch.
that podcasts are not a visual medium because you're missing so much, and we're going to do our best to explain what we are seeing and why we find it funny.
And this is a kind of a scene to set up how they're being treated in this feudal land.
Correct. Yeah, it's if it wasn't
The
obvious
lowest
with
of
the
the low.
intro, it's obvious now. I also love how Homer is all in on feudalism.
Because Lisa's anti-feudalist here. She's like
Yes.
a troublemaker
Yes.
in a time when you can't. And I love it. You know, I love her in this. She's like lousy nobles.
And Homer brings up how they got a hovel, bountiful filth, and boils that he can mess with, and they have
And
very
they got all of
disgusting,
that under
very
the
disgustingly
system.
drawn boils
Oh,
on his
God.
arm. Like, it is very disturbing.
I really enjoy Yardley Smith's acting in that scene because she's like, didn't nobles, you know, drawn themselves out of unicorns? Like, using unicorn wouldn't even like them. And there's just something about the way she does it. I love it. I love that little beat.
Actually, it's good that you bring up the unicorn part too, because obviously Lisa is like famously horse lover. You know, she always wants a pony, and you know, it's like, oh, and then nobles get that. I should have a unicorn, not those rich people.
Right.
So that's very well done.
I love it.
And the family, Millhouse is a goblin, comes in, and they decide to go pick up Grandma and check out the severed heads.
You get a classic Millhouse, like, there's new heads on the wall.
Yeah. So they decide to go out as a family to enjoy that, and but first they're going to go to the retirement castle, which is basically from Lord of the Rings. There was that giant spider, and so basically all the old folks in this town,
it's like a spider nest,
are being kept in a spider nest. And I love the bit where like you hear Grandpa be like, "Oh, you're here to see me," and it's like, "Shut up, no."
Hey, Leslie, because Homer pokes him, he's like, "Son, is that you?" And Homer just goes, "No."
Yeah. And then we get Grandma Jacqueline Bouvier, and so throughout this episode, I'm going to call her Grandma Jackie.
It's Marge's mother.
Yep, and she's immediately complaining. She's like, "Oh my God, you disturbed my nap." So she's not very happy to be going out and about with the family.
I love that. We don't get a lot of her in any episodes.
No,
she's
you
not
do in some.
Some, definitely.
Yeah. I think it's really hard on the voice actress's voice, because I remember in a past episode where there was Grandma Jackie, Patty and Selma, and Marge, and she's just like, it destroyed me. Doing that harsh tone, you know, consistently can be rough. So we're at the heads, and I love how Bart says, "Wow, they didn't skip on the tar."
They're admiring them very closely.
Yeah, no, they're all having a great time. This is like their Sunday fun day, you know, is going out to see the heads.
I love it when they look up and Marge sees Ned Flanders' head is up there, and I mean, it looks gross. She's like, "Oh, there's Ned Flanders. It's nice when you know someone."
Yeah, I also love how she points out those are the sideburns I thought you should grow, and Homer is just like, pretty sharp. And then that kind of,
and they're just, and it shows the, you know, the shot from the head, and it looks gross. Like the tongue's all hanging out, it's all blue, and
Lisa continues to rant against feudalism, saying like, "Look, all the rich people get the higher pikes for the better view." Which,
I love that.
The better view? What the fuck are you talking about, Lisa?
I love how Homer says it every time. He's like, "That's feudalist talk, like that's fancy talk." Or something like
We discover that Grandma Jackie has a frozen hand, which is a serious condition, and we cut to Barber Hibbert's surgery, and the sign reads, "It's flu season. Have your leg cut off." And then Dr. Hibbert tells Krusty he has genital Snerfs, and this is one of my favorite running gags that we have.
He's not just telling him because.
Oh yeah, no, it's obvious. And if you could roll
It's a
clip
great
number 1,
animal
sir,
here.
we will hear what the diagnosis is.
It's never easy to say this. You've got genital Snerfs.
La 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 la, we love our new home.
And the thing, you always see them where they're like, pressing out of his pants.
Yep.
And you see him like wiggling around under there. It's
and anytime he opens up his
hilarious.
pants, you hear that and they're tossing little Smurf hats.
La, la, la.
So folks who don't know, Smurfs was a cartoon back in the day that featured little blue people in a communist society that lived in mushroom homes. And so it's just like a really
Goddamn
fun,
hippies.
cute little bit that the idea that these things can exist as an STD, and they have, and it just cracks me up every time. The audio design, the animation, the joke itself, firing all on cylinders for this one. So Grandma Jackie is diagnosed with progressive frozen mortification, and it turns out that she'll be a complete ice walker because she was bit. And I love this whole thing is like, yes, I dated somebody who hated the warmth and flesh of the living, and then he got fresh,
So one of my favorite parts in this is that this White Walker leans in the window.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Sorry, baby. Like, I know I screwed up, but if you give me another chance, I love you." And Marge is like, she's 900 years younger than you, you perv. He's like, "I like 'em young. That ain't no crime." And then he gives the creepiest laugh, like,
yeah. No, and he kind of like, he's kind of like, "Bye, see you later."
They definitely did acid for this episode, Josh, because it is chock full of these things that are just brilliant, but out of nowhere.
And the White Walker design is straight out of Game of Thrones.
I'm sorry, baby. I know I screwed up.
Yeah.
He's got flowers in hand.
Yeah. Yep. And then so we find out in a week she'll be frozen solid, and the only way to prevent it is to buy a magic amulet.
A very expensive magic amulet.
We find out that it's going to cost 100 gold pieces, and there's this great bit where Homer is basically vomiting out D&D terms to explain
just randomly
how expensive this is compared to their situation.
Like 10th level mage X, Y, and Z. Yeah.
Right, like someone, you wouldn't even get this in an average campaign, type of deal. So it was pretty funny in that regard. And again, the visual gags are everywhere. So in the background, we see Cold Stone Screamery, and Mole Man is getting whipped. We see urban outhouses, which is a fun bit. I just like, what makes the outhouses urban? I don't know. And then we get another callback to our Ice Walker friend who sees a corpse hanging from a noose. And it was just like, "Oh, hey there, good looking."
Starts hitting on the corpse.
Yeah. Look at you, looking good.
Hey, good looking.
Yeah.
There's a piece there that I really like where, because Marge is like, "We had to do this for my mother's life," and Homer's like, "Are you sure we really need to do this? Does it make sense to spend this kind of money on somebody who's just going to get a little older anyway?"
Yeah, so they are, like, as you alluded to, they're trying to figure out how to, like, make this happen or don't happen. And I love how they kind of look around and they're like, "Well, we don't have any money." And they look around for processions, and they like look at the gelatinous cube, and there's a cat skeleton inside.
Another 100% random.
Yeah, I mean, that's from Dungeons and Dragons.
A gelatinous cube with a mouth and arms,
and it's fully animated and can talk and personified, right? And so he's like,
cat skeleton in it.
He's like, "I told him not to nap on me, so that's on him." And like he has this kind of like cool like voice with he's like, "Hey, what's going on, peoples?"
Yeah, it's like a little Disco Stew-ish.
Yeah, and so Marge is really pissed.
Well, because the Marge, it's like, "Listen, Homer, we're fucking doing this for my mom, okay? Like, shut the fuck up." And then Homer goes, "All I'm saying is..."
Yeah, and then we get clipped.
Goes him out of the house.
And hit the clip right now, and we'll hear that exact exchange. At least post that.
All I'm saying is...
Homer Serfson, you are the most selfish jerk in the entire Tri-Kingdom area. I should have listened to that witch and married my twin brother Mercury.
Always here if you need me, sis.
So the guest
so
star
creepy.
playing Marky really leans into his incestual Game of Thrones,
it's
Jamie
so
Lannister
sleazy.
character. Very well
Yeah,
done.
absolutely.
So then we cut to Moe's and we see George R.R. Martin walking out front with a sign, and on the front it says "The end is not nigh." On the front and on the back it says "I'll tell you when it's nigh."
They kind of give it to George R.R. Martin several
A little
times in
bit.
this episode.
Yeah, they call him out on some stuff, and he has this classic hat and suspenders and dress shirt on. So he's not in a feudal outfit at all. He's just himself. And inside of Moe's, we see How to Train Your Dragon on the mantle head in the background.
What is it now?
How to Train Your. I'm sorry.
Would you say it again? What it was?
Oh, the How to Train Your Dragon. Do you know that cartoon movie from DreamWorks? There is a head of one of the dragons on a mantle in the background of Moe's. So again, eagle eye on this one.
It's the black one, right?
They color him green, but it's the same shape as the black one. It's just altered enough to where it could be a parody.
Dragon.
Yes. And so we get now something that we haven't dealt with on our episodes here at Sacrilicious. So we get our first prank phone call, but of course it's in the guise of Game of Thrones. So there's a raven that comes on. And so we have a message from my lady Gwendolyn Parts, and Mo goes, "Hey, has anyone seen my lady Parts? Come on, someone grab my lady Parts."
Yeah, and then you get that depends. How big is your dowry?
And then everybody starts cracking up at the bar. And then, in classic fashion, Mo writes back an angry message, right? And he's like, "I'm going to get you and do all these terrible things to you."
Yeah.
And Bart and Milhouse are laughing.
Are just laid out laughing.
Yeah, they love it. So then we cut to Homer's day job, which is very much like Conan the Destroyer when he was just pushing a giant gear. Unlike Arnold Schwarzenegger's character, though, Homer remains the same flabby middle-aged man that he was to start with. I love how Willie has a giant troll is fun. I really like that design.
Well, I love his whipping there. It's like he's whipping them with a whip and just brutally whipping them. And then he's like, oh, breaks over. And he breaks out this whip and it's got three metal...
it looks like rakes.
Rakes, like metal rakes attached to it. And he's whipping them now. It's
it's like
breaks over.
It's a very brutal cat of nine tails. Yeah.
That's a theme in this show. They don't skip on it. The heads on the pikes. The animation here is not cutting corners.
Well, and that kind of mirrors fantasy in general, so they're trying to do a critique of the genre. And one thing that fantasy has in spades is violence.
Yeah. 100%.
So Homer goes to Mr. Burns asking for a salary, which is hilarious.
This is a great scene.
And we have Smithers, doesn't have any dialogue, but he's standing behind Burns like an Adonis. He is ripped. He has a great facial hair that's a kind of braided mustache thing and holding a giant weapon. Very, very cool look.
Is he your hall pass? I love what Homer says. He's like, "Mr. Burns, could I have a forward of my salary, and could I have a salary?"
Yeah. So it's very obviously that they're working for free. And then we find out that the rich people are just generating this for almost nothing. And I think clip number 3 will give us an idea of what they're talking about.
Have you ever noticed that the wheel isn't hooked up to anything, but your work does produce something very special, human misery, which, when collected, ground into a powder and snorted, gives rich people tiny wings that do nothing.
So the icing on the cake to me is that tagline with "that do nothing." So not only are they snorting all this powder just to get the little wings, but they don't do anything at all.
Useless.
Red Bull would have been easier. You could just drink a Red Bull and get all the wings you want, from what I've been told. So that was a fun little bit, and I do like.
And Homer acquiesces too. He's like, "Oh, you're right."
yeah. And then there's a cute little thing too, where he's almost rethought. He's like, "Wait, no, that doesn't." And Burns is kind of just pointing at the little wings. He's like, "Oh yeah, that's right,
okay."
So back at the hovel, Marge is visited by the Christian line Aslan.
He's like a Mormon at the door.
Yep.
And so any of our listeners, Josh and I, we talked about this, is that I love the Lion and the Witch and the Wardrobe series. I read it when I was like 12 years old. It was my first big series. And so I love that. I've seen 4 different variations of these produced. I had my parents' friend produced a live action version for the BBC, and I got to go see that in New York, like a premiere of that. So just love those, and this to me is hilarious
Yeah, because it
because
picks up on the Christian overtones that are
the
throughout that
massive.
novel.
Listen, C.S. Lewis was a theologian and an
Right.
accomplished scholar, Anglican scholar. My mother and sister have advanced degrees in theology, and his textbooks are standard.
And I also love how Marge isn't taking any of this guff or this attempt. And if you could roll the final clip I have for this episode, we'll get a little piece of this.
Hi, Aslan.
Marge, my child, I've come to offer solace in this difficult time.
You mean convert me to your religion when I'm at my most vulnerable?
No.
And he goes, I'm just here to ask you an important question. Have you heard the news?
Yeah.
And that is so indicative of, like Bible thumpers coming, just, I'll leave you alone, but have you heard the word? It's like, yes,
I have a quick little tangent about people coming to the door. So when I was living in Chatsworth, it was just my brother and I were doing our thing, cleaning the house, and we were listening to the German band that does Du hast me. I forget their name off the top of my head right now. But it was very funny because a couple Bible thumpers came up to the door doing the usual things. And I just straight up like, Michael, that one's for you. And he opens up the door and going like, you are disturbing my satanic rituals, and then slams the door in their face. And then they kind of look at each other and then walk away. And meanwhile, like I'm looking out one of the side windows at the front and I'm just like dying. I'm like, oh, this is so good. I was like, I love you. You're
I'm
the
sure
best.
they get that stuff all the time.
Yeah. But it was pretty funny.
That's fantastic.
So in town, Homer and Lisa are walking around, and we got more visual sign gags. My favorite of the bunch is the Apple Store, which is just literal apples with one bite taken out of to match the tech company logo. Any of those stand out for you?
No, I love this scene for Lisa and Homer's interaction.
There you go. So we find out that Homer carries around a lucky lead nugget. And Homer has this whole line of a lead lick a day keeps the doctor. And Lisa, we find out, has some magical skill, and she's able to do, I believe it's called alchemy, where she changes the lead to gold.
Down an alley, very secretive, and she does turn this lead lump to gold.
Yeah, and the animation is very cool. It's the classic, spiraling winds of magical colors, and the camera angles. Again, this is a fabulously drawn episode, and you can tell that it's from 2017 because they have the budget
the spell
to do
that
this.
She did is beautifully done.
Yeah, I also wonder if they would have been able to have this level of detail, but like in the olden years when
they're doing hand drawn.
Yeah, versus CGI.
Yeah.
Because at this point in the game, it's all CGI all the time.
But I mean, listen, they did such a good job with the details, not just on like those pieces, but the town itself.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's wonderful. So the king, we find out, uses wizards to do the bidding, and will take
like Lisa's in danger because if he finds out.
So very much like the Jedi Order in Star Wars, if you are magic sensitive, the big bad government is going to come and take you from your family and make you an orphan because, that never backfires.
Make you work for them.
I also like how King Quimby is trying to get an eye of Sauron, but the kids screw up and we get a nose of Sauron. And
there's of Sauron.
And there's a funny animated bit.
Hilarious.
With it at the top, right? And you just hear
And he said, "You imbeciles!" Oh, that's fantastic.
So remind me what word triggers Aslan popping up to Homer and Lisa?
And so they're talking about how dangerous this is, and Homer goes, "Don't worry, mum's the word." And he pops around the corner and he goes, "Did you say the word?" And they're both like,
Yeah,
And
well,
they're
and,
both like,
they're
Aslan.
which I love. I
But
love the running bit that
that's
nobody likes this
hilarious.
guy. Nobody likes him in the town
Well,
of
and
Sid.
it's just like that, beating your religion over people's head and
Yeah.
constantly trying to like talk to them about your religion, and yeah, they were not kind to that. in
So
this.
now we see Bart in Goblin Millhouse, who I will now call Gobmill, is playing
Oh.
tetherball with a spiked
I don't know
metal
if you
mace on a
should.
chain. I love
That's
this.
fucking hilarious. It's
I
like the
love it.
mace instead of the tetherball.
Yeah, and in the background you see all these Millhouse corpses,
Yeah, I
and
know. But there's also like an infinite line of Millhouses
Correct.
goblins lined up.
And I love how Gobmill is killed, and apparently there's legions of them, right? And he's like, eventually you're gonna run out of me. And he's like, I said play, or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, Bart's just relishing in killing them over and over again.
So now Homer and Marge go to Grandma Jackie to give her the amulet purchase with the gold nugget. And Homer is feeling very proud of himself in this moment. And one of my favorite lines is like, honey, don't you have something to say to me? And Marge goes, I said it when I was 11 and I'll say it now. You're the greatest husband in the world. I really got to work on my Marge. But anyway, I love the whole, I said it when I was 11 and I'll say it now. Like, fucking hilarious. Was there any jokes that stood out to you for this point?
So what I love is when Bart is like, hey, jerk, where'd you get that gold for that? And Homer goes, I strangled a leprechaun.
Yeah, and then there's a
I
cute
strangled a leprechaun.
There's a cute little wink between him and Lisa too, because mum's the words. I also like how Grandma Jackie is not really digging this at all. Like she lived her life. She's ready to die.
Yeah, she's like, I'm not interested.
And there's some really fun jokes about how terrible it is to live or die. And that Homer's dad married an ogre after his mom was eaten by another ogre, which is kind of like a throwaway joke, but I thought that was funny.
I love that.
And then Marge starts tearing up, and Grandma sees her daughter crying, wanting her to live, and she kind of relents and says, "Okay, I will wear the amulet and cure to the disease." Marge is instantly like happy, and she decides like, "Let's cook a hobbit for dinner.
We're gonna celebrate." And then it shows like hobbits in a cage, and she's picking out the one to slaughter.
I also love how they're all smoking, which is very Tolkien-esque.
Very much smoking those long pipes. Yep. I love how they're also like complicit. They're like, I'm going to be this time because I'm the tastiest. They're like, no, I'm the tastiest.
Yeah, it's very cute.
Dark humor in this one, Josh. Dark humor in this one.
All right, so now we get our second callback to Genital Snerfs. Krusty is we're back into town.
We go into the town square.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Krusty is being beaten over the head with a broom by Lindsay Nagel, our famous alcoholic lawyer that we were introduced from the last episode that
She's
did.
chasing him out of her house.
Yeah, and I love how he goes is like, how do you know it was me? And we cut to the Genital Smurf. We miss you. We miss you too. Love you. Love you too.
Like they're like talking to each other from each other's crotches.
Yeah. It's so good. It's so funny. We find out that Snake is tied up in the town square for reading, apparently, which out of all the people to read, I think Snake would have been low on the list there.
He's low key, erudite.
And there was a fun sign in the background that said "Fool Locker."
I like how Bart and Homer are just chucking rocks at Snake.
Yes,
it's
and it's all casual in the background. So like you see the first establishing shot of Snake getting hit, and then they like as they're talking, they'll just randomly throw one out his direction. And Homer and Bart kind of have like a fun father-son moment where they discuss Grandma dying. And Homer brings out that like, it's good to die because in our afterlife, it's the field of bliss. You just frolic through the fields and every once in a while there's a ribbon.
It's another very Christian reference of, so what do you do if you're up in the clouds? And you're like, well, you're just up in the clouds. You're fine.
Yeah, it's not like it's
frolicking in the fields. Is there anything else? He's like, there's a ribbon.
And we get this very fun bit where other characters come up to discuss their afterlife. So we have Duffman looking like Man-at-Arms from He-Man. Wiggum looks like a pig snout lizard thing. Kirk Van Houten is obviously a goblin like his son Milhouse. Sea Captain looks almost the same, only he's more like wearing rags than a Sea Captain outfit. Like it's very similar.
I love Sea Captain's idea of the afterlife where he says it's mermaids. Somewhere the fish is the top part.
That is a joke that flew over my head until I watched it the second time, and I was dying. I was just like, "Oh, this guy's getting
fantastic."
Yeah, and also Otto looks surprisingly good. Like Otto is like he looks like he's doing okay in this feudal
Yeah,
society.
definitely. He's
Yeah,
kind
so
of got muscles on him.
so then Bart asks the obvious question that most atheists ask, and it's like, well, what if there's nothing? And
Yeah.
Wiggum has the
What if
best
we're just,
retort.
but this gets like he brings it down here, like he lays it out, and he's like, "Well, what if that's it?" You know,
Yeah, and everybody
they don't
kind of
shy away from this.
and the whole crowd he's with kind of ponders it, and Wiggum's just like, it's clean. I'll give you that.
It's a fantastic line.
So we're back home with Grandma, and she's complaining about life being boring, and Marge is really trying to get the kids to participate.
I love her line there because she's like, "Oh yeah, this is way better than death."
Yeah, her sarcasm is thick. I also love how Bart is like, I got nothing. I'm going to go enjoy the golden age of cleavage.
Marge is like, don't you have anything you want to say to your grandmother?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Tell
me the line again.
So Bart goes, I got nothing. I'm going to go enjoy the golden age of cleavage, which I love. I mean, I knew this the first time I went to a Renaissance fair. Yeah,
bodices
absolutely.
and everything.
I also like how Lisa asks about her love life, and what's the joke that Grandma has?
She goes like, "I dated a shapeshifter once. I thought I could keep them from changing. I was wrong."
Fabulous line.
I dated a shapeshifter. I thought I could keep him from changing.
Yeah, I really like that. That was a very
she's bitter. She's like, "Love
joke.
is a fairy tale."
Yeah, she's over it, man. Like she's lived her life. She's had her lovers. She's had her kids. She's done. I also love how Homer is munching on a hobbit foot and Maggie is sucking a crow beak in the background. That's pretty cool. And then we get the wizards. We get Apu, Frink, and Chalmers, and it's very much Harry Potter vibes for this. Very cool animation for their intro.
I love the animation of this one. Yeah. One comes through like a portal. The other one like comes out of the flames, and it's well done. Like the one where they get together, the two wizards that have shown up, and they like do this like intense spell and bring the third one in, and he materializes. It's great animation.
It's really cool and over the top. And once again, like I got very big Harry Potter vibes from the costume designs that they were going for. And obviously the cat is out of the bag, or should I say gelatinous cube. And so they know Lisa has been practicing magic, and Marge is crestfallen unknowingly that she played a part in Lisa being taken away from her. And Homer tries to intervene, but Apu casts a spell of toenail prison. And so like
toenail imprisonum.
And then the toenails grow really, really large and encase him in a sphere that kind of reminded me of the American Gladiators.
This episode is gross too.
Yeah, it's super gross. But like, do you remember American Gladiators? Remember the big ball game that they would when they would smash into each other? So that was like what reminded me for that.
We should do that sometime.
Yeah.
I like that Bart grabs the stick and he's like, maybe I'm magic too. And he goes, Abra caramba.
And then Chalmers replies, oh yeah, pick up a stick and say something like funny. That's not insulting at all.
That's not insulting at all.
That's not insulting whatsoever. I also love how they're leaving and Apu says, take a peasant, leave a peasant. And he drops off one of the little girls. And she's just kind of awkwardly waving like at the family, which is hilarious. Then we get another string of feudalism jokes from Homer when he's talking about rescuing Lisa. And my favorite one of the bit is the Bill of No Rights.
He's like, you're going to be attacking the system itself. I love, what does he say? Something like, one person, no vote.
Yeah, that might be us sooner than we think. Anyway, I also like how, Homer's nails are being cut to free him from the prison, and the gelatinous cube comes over and he's like, I'm just checking, I could eat these, right? I don't want to be rude, it's better to ask than to assume.
Do you mind if I dissolve these?
Yeah, and he's like starts shoving them into himself, like again, very gross.
Better to
very
ask.
Gross stuff.
That's so random and hilarious in this episode.
So Homer tries to rally the poor against the nobles with a speech that ends basically with, why can't we kill a bunch of rich jerks and take their stuff? I think this is a rallying cry that people should take up across the country.
Yes, let this be seriously. Day one, Josh. Day one.
Yeah, peasants of the world unite.
Peasants of the world unite.
So the family or the town
got
does
a rebellion.
Rally. Yep, we got a rebellion going, and they're going up to a fortified castle, and they're like, well, shit, what do we do about this? And we get a very obvious Lord of the Rings reference. For anybody who doesn't know, they have tree creatures that can talk and are very tall and whatnot, and help
Called
in
the Ents.
called the Ents, and they help out in the Two Towers,
They're
against
very powerful, very
the
old.
wizard Saruman. They help out with that.
And I think what's important about this joke is that they are massively powerful and massively respected.
Yes, yeah. And so the noble trees come up to him and they're like, we are here to help you in this one of a time occasion. And it's like, and then Homer replies something along the lines like, your sacrifice won't be made in vain. And the tree replies, sacrifice? Cut to
wait, what?
Cut to all of the Ents have been cut into ladders. And then I know you wanted to say this one bit.
So they have the ladders, but like on the side of one that Homer's chopped up these Ents, like murdered them, and his face is on the side of the ladder and it's still talking. And he's like, we could have just torn down the walls for you in 5 minutes. And Homer goes, trees can't talk, silly, and then uses a planer to cut his face off.
Yeah.
Like
one
it's
swoop.
dark.
It's
humor.
very
It's
dark.
hilarious.
So now that they're able to
They pulled no punches on this one.
And now that they're able to storm the castle walls, like we get all sorts of action. Everybody's doing all sorts of fun animated bits. But one of my
I like
favorite,
how the weapons they have.
Yeah,
Like
they're-
Nelson is running around with baguettes,
Yes.
which he's grabbed, and they act like swords. He's like chopping people's heads off and
Yeah.
stabbing them through with these baguettes.
or like the
Random
three other
again.
bullies throw a rock through a armory store that has all these swords and shields, but then they pick up glass shards to use as weapons.
They had every weapon. They're just supposed to like pick up the glass shards instead. I
Yeah.
love those jokes the writers do just to show how stupid people could be. And it,
Yeah.
and it
Oh, and
gets me
again, this
every
is
time.
why I had to watch this episode like 2 or 3 times just to get all the visual gags. Like it is
Absolutely.
packed.
Packed.
And in the castle, they're doing all sorts of fun things as we discussed. And then Bart screams, Millhouses, save your girlfriend. And so we just see
there's all the mill houses are
a
there.
legion of gobmills coming in. And I love how like they're like, oh, we're gonna get you, and the classic Millhouse kind of lines. And Lisa's like, no,
Because he said Millhouse save your girlfriend, and Millhouses are like save our girlfriends, and she's like, yeah, I'm just a friend.
we're just a friend,
Who's
just
a
a friend.
girl. Just
Yeah.
clear.
And then they say something
Millhouses
like,
go, something to build on, like
that's
in
yeah,
unison.
exactly, 100%.
Oh, I love that line.
Oh, it's so good. But this everything seems to be going okay until Rainier shows up with a goddamn dragon
On the back of a dragon.
And my favorite line of his is he goes, "You peasants are a drag on the local economy." And Sideshow Mel is just like, "I love a good pun."
He's like, I get it. And then he gets burned to a crisp, and his last line is, "My love for wordplay is undiminished." And he turns to dust.
I also really think he looked cool. Like he looked like a capable fighter, unlike some of the other. Like he had like actual sword and armor and stuff like that. So that was pretty funny.
I do appreciate also the wordplay. I'm a huge fan of words and crosswords and all word games,
course.
all of those things.
Yeah,
And
no,
my mother believed in vocabulary in a massive way, and both of my parents were well read, and I appreciate that.
You don't have a bone in your hair, but you have some Sideshow Mel in you.
Oh, thanks.
A lover of the theater of wordplay. So Grandma Jackie reconciles with Marge, and we get a whole like kind of very cute like, look, I'm gonna go out and Ice Queen. It's my time. Let me do this.
Yeah, I'm gonna go out and Ice Queen. That's a hell of a last line right there.
Yeah, and she charges into it, and basically
it's a cool scene.
It's really cool because like she's
marching
kind of
towards this
melting, but she's
dragon.
marching, and like she's doing like old grandma
She gets
stuff. so
blasted
very
by
forceful.
fire.
Yep,
It's a badass scene.
And so like I don't know why the dragon didn't try to fly away, but it just stood there with its mouth open, and Grandma Jackie walks right in, kills the dragon, and all of a sudden like the crowd is cheering, and we get another joke about the afterlife again, which is hilarious.
But the mom gave her life to save theirs, and that's very sweet. And Homer of course goes, "Take comfort, Marge. Now she's in the fields of bliss." And because of how good the animation is earlier on that, it's an instant callback of like Homer frolicking in like a wheat field.
And so we get also another callback to Genital Snerfs again, which is just fucking amazing.
Because they're, they do the same gag again where they're like talking about, Homer's like Fields of Bliss, and then Kirk goes, no, she's in Goblin Money Heaven. And it's Willie going, the afterlife is snakes chewing your eyes, but it feels good. and then you show the Snerfs in Krusty's pants, and they're like, this is our heaven.
Yeah. Fucking great. Thank you for calling that out. That's very funny.
I love that piece. The Snerfs in this.
I also love how there's a message where, about like, maybe none of those afterlives are a thing, and the memory of our loved ones is what is important. So as long as we remember them, they will live on. And then they kind of like, Homer looks to camera and he's like, don't worry, eventually no one will remember you. And I like that. I think there's something comfortable in that idea.
It's very much, he turns, it's like earlier when Bart is talking about it, its exact line is, you'll always remember them until you die. And then it's like she never existed. And someday no one will remember you or anybody.
And he does that deadpan to camera, like
deadpan.
So he's talking about The Simpsons.
That's some philosophy shit right there.
So we discover that the last dragon was dead now, and all magic is gone and faded away. And Lisa tries to give this whole like rallying speech about like maybe we can cast off the shackles of feudalism and live in a technological world.
Everybody's terrified about losing magic.
Yeah, and so immediately Homer is just like throwing wood fire, trying a wood fire in the dragon's mouth. He's like, "Come on, boy.
Trying to bring the dragon that had just tried to kill them back to life."
Yeah. And then Marge cracks a joke about the fantasy genre, and Family Guy, the comic book guy, leads an affirmative. And it's basically saying, like, one of the reasons we have these fantasy worlds is just for an excuse to people to create violent, overly sexualized stories.
They dig at George R.R. Martin.
Well, and it's not just George R.R. Martin. I mean, even Tolkien has very big, awesome army fight
the Wheel
scenes.
of Time.
Right. And, the elves are fucking sexy as hell, right?
I do them, yeah.
Yeah, are you kidding me? Yeah. Legolas. No, Lego, yes. And I always found attractive the
Galadriel to do Galadriel.
Yeah, is that the gal that marries the king, Arion? God, I'm
no. Galadriel is the queen.
Oh, is the queen?
Yeah,
yes. I'm thinking of the daughter of the Riverlands or whatever, Rivendell, and I'm getting all mixed up here. Anyway, this isn't a Lord of the Rings thing.
Liv Tyler, Steven Tyler's daughter.
Elves are hot.
I love how Lisa's still going in this episode. Like, listen, we don't need magic. We can use science and we can use our brains.
Right. And thank you for getting me back on track, because as she's talking, like, we see all these magical creatures fade away. Kurt and Milhouse go away. Aslan goes away. But as soon as soon as the fire is rekindled, they all come back, and you like the Aslan joke.
Because Aslan comes back in a very overt Christian reference. He's like, "I am risen," which is what we chant around Easter every year.
Yeah, which is really good. And then the episode ends with the dragon burning the Serfsons village, and they're like, "Oh, we're so happy," as like they're watching their home.
Look, the dragon's burning the line. She goes, "I love our life."
Yeah. I also love how we see the credits start to roll, and they get very lovely pencil drawings of all the different character designs.
Very much like the after credits pieces you see in Lord of the Rings.
Yes, very much so. All right. Well, final thoughts. The amount of work the writers and animators put into this show is amazing. Nothing to reuse from past episodes, new set designs, character designs, and a boatload of visual gags. A solid plot that rips on all popular fantasy, and of course, genital Snerfs. I had to watch this episode, like I said, like 3 or 4 times just to get everything. Once for notes, and then I took my last viewing just to sit there as a fan and watch the episode and kind of let it wash over me. So what are your final thoughts on this episode?
Yeah, I mean, I agree that it is chock full. Both of these episodes were dense with jokes, which was really fun. both of these episodes are really, really fun. They definitely were doing this spoof as an indictment of how manic people are about these series, so that was a big part of it. And like the all of these layers they did, like the Christianity piece, which again I loved Aslan in this, and there's very specific Anglican references. And C.S. Lewis is an Anglican author or an Anglican theologian, and they're making specific jokes for me who grew up in the Anglican church that just make it even better. But the fact that they took the time not to just do generalized ones, but to put it in this frame of reference of this specifically Anglican church behind it made it even better for me. And that's just such smart writing. So appreciated that a lot. Yeah.
Well, awesome. Great job, me.
Great job, Josh.
Wait, Robin.
You get a Snerf.
Yeah. Also, Snerf and Snerts are really close to each other, and I am proud that I don't think I screwed that up. But we'll see when I re-listen to this for post.
You didn't. You did a good job.
Robin, do you hear that sound?
What's that, Josh?
Well, you know what time it is. It's the
Crusty Brand Seal of Approval.
Yeah!
Yeah! Woo!
All right, so it's that time again where we're going to rate our episodes. Crusty Brand Seal of Approval from me on the Barbershop Quartet is a 3 out of 5.
For me, this is one of those episodes that I've always remembered a lot, and there's not a ton of those as well, but that rewatching it again, it reminded me of why I love it so much. And I really enjoyed it. It was a 4 for me.
Nice. Yeah, the only reason I gave it a 3, I believe, is because I'm not a huge Beatles fan. So a lot of it to me just kind of fell flat. But it's a very solid episode with great writing. So that's why I'm putting it like in the middle of the road. It's good. It's good. It's just not great or greatest or whatever.
The interesting thing, Josh, is that we see here in both of these episodes where they're piling jokes in that aren't necessarily directed towards the main storyline. And in later shows, we've seen it where they try and mimic that, and it doesn't go so well, where it just seems random and it kind of takes you out. In these, I thought in both of them, they did that so well. Just were just so packed with silliness and fun.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And they did get to the plot rather quickly. It wasn't like the other episode where they had like 2 cold openers and we're just kind of like, get to the point, get on with it. And then so for the Serfsons, I love this one so much. I'm giving it a 5.
Brilliant.
What's your score for the Serfsons?
I was going to give it a 3. And
Excellent.
I was going to give it a 3 because I love the episode. I love the way that they did it. I love the writing and I love the jokes and how they were. That they were so far apart. And we've, again, had some episodes where some of the jokes were kind of random and stuck out. Where I thought in a season 29 episode to have that kind of very tight layered comedy was absolutely fantastic. I don't think I react as much to kind of like the overt reference Simpsons, although I did really love this one. But I don't think it's canon, which I do with 4, and I don't think it's the very best, which is what I do for a 5.
Sure.
But I think it's just a fantastic episode.
I also like how we're finally getting some differences in our scores. I made an error. I said last time we only had different scores for one episode. It's actually 2. So Camp Krusty, Lemon of Troy, and now the Serfsons and the Barbershop Quartet all have a little bit different scores on our tracker here. So that's neat.
Cool.
I also like how we each brought an episode that we really liked, but the other one was like, yeah, no, it's good, just not like my top.
Yeah. And it's funny that we both loved those. Yeah, I loved both of these episodes. This was a really, really fun show to do.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, That's a wrap for Sacrilicious with Robin and Snerts. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you're feeling generous, then please leave a 5-star review with a few sentences. We are currently on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts. Shout out to the following people. I recently had the honor of being on the Delvin Cox Experience to promote the podcast. So shout out to Delvin Cox. Please give him a listen on your platform of choice. I also am going to shout out Tales of the Forgotten Network again, run by Crystal Storm and her wife, partner Hannah, soon-to-be wife, I hope. And they recently wrapped up their series Don't Look Up, and that is a fun horror audio drama. So if you like that kind of thing, give it a listen. You can binge all 4 episodes now. It has the Snerts seal of approval. And finally, the raddest fan of them all, Dr. Moxford.
The Doctor.
You want to hear more from your old pal Snerts? Then check out the PlayStation Experience on your podcast platform of choice. I can also be found on most of the things at Lord_Snerts. Robin, what outros or plugs do you have?
I want to give a shout out to my sister Courtney, who is, in my family, somebody that I went on, learned a lot from. When I was in New York, I lived at an Anglican seminary because she was going there, and I got an apartment there. And it was a lot of fun. And we went to the lighting of the torch in New York for the Statue of Liberty. She and I have been on a lot of adventures together, and this is an episode on both sides that she would love because of the references that we share.
Awesome. Well, our next goal is to get an episode out on Sunday, August 4th, and we are going to be switching up the format a little. Rob and I have been talking about this for a long time, and as much as we like picking 2 episodes to discuss and kind of compare to each other on go, it does lead to longer episodes, and we were really trying to create a podcast that was under 90 minutes. Mm-hmm. And if we can, maybe an hour. But we have had mission creep ever since we started this podcast, and each episode gets longer and longer and longer. Also, we keep diving more into these episodes to find interesting things to discuss. So moving forward, Sacrilicious with Robin and Snerts, Robin and I will still pick an episode, but we're not going to do 2 episodes per one podcast. We're just going to do 1 episode per podcast. Mm-hmm. And in the near future, we're also trying to work on guests. That is something that we are still trying to figure out a format on. So we're still going to give you the content, but we need to kind of trim back a little, pull back a little, reassess. And
it'll be easier to listen to the whole thing.
Correct. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and when you get north of 2 hours, I kind of start to check out. So Robin is going to be first with this solo adventure, and his pick is Bart the Murderer. So until next time, folks, smell you later, true believers.
I can't believe that place goodbye.
Don't!
Ay, caramba!
Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.